Hello, Yaleys. You know, I just got to say, I appreciate you inviting me here despite the fact that I may have graduated from the wrong college. And I will tell you this, that at my college graduation, nobody had the incredible display of hats that all of you have today. But I did get a chance right before this to steal a hat from one of your fellow college graduates. It was a giant banana that's on stage here today, and he allowed me to put it on. So thank you so much for allowing me to fill that gap in my college experience. So appreciate it. I want to thank Olivia for that incredibly kind welcome. And my thanks also to President Salave, to the faculty and staff who are here today, to the family and friends, and everyone who is here to celebrate all of you, the class of 2024. You know, today is a particularly special day because 4 years ago, many of you didn't have a high school graduation. I know many of you also caught here to Yale and found that you had to take classes virtually and that you didn't have the opportunity to actually see each other the way that you thought you would. But despite facing these truly unprecedented circumstances, you persevered, you learned, you built meaningful relationships with one another. This togetherness that has come to define your class, it didn't just happen. You fought for it, you created it, and it is just one of the many reasons that we are so incredibly proud of you today. When I came to Yale, it was the fall of 1998. I was a medical student, and I was a shy and introverted young man who had gone through high school and college, never really quite feeling like I belonged. But over eggplant parm sandwiches at Yorkside, snowball fights right here on Old Campus, group study sessions in the Star Reading Room because our library was under construction at the med school, and just through so many late night conversations walking through this campus, I found my people. Curious, quirky, and fiercely kind people who inspired me and made me laugh. Yale blessed me with friends I loved and with mentors I treasured. And it was here at Yale that I finally found that elusive sense of belonging. But I will admit that there were some embarrassing moments too. Like the time I thought I was so clever for discovering this beautiful garden that was tucked behind a building on campus that nobody seemed to know about. Now, I studied there in the afternoons. I ate meals there under the canopy of trees. I even laid out a blanket and took long naps during the day. This was my personal haven. But it wasn't until a few months later that a faculty member informed me that my secret hideaway was actually the backyard of a private home. And even worse, that home belonged to none other than the president of Yale University. President Salve, I want you to, don't worry, that was before your time. It was President Levin's time, so you have nothing to worry about. But the single greatest gift that I would ever receive from Yale would come a few years later, when I unexpectedly crossed paths with a Yale College grad from Morse College. Right? I see you, Morse. And we met while working on advocacy efforts to make our healthcare system better for our patients. Her name was Alice Chen. And in 2015, we returned to this campus where I proposed to her next to the lipstick at Morse. And we celebrated right afterwards with our friends, and none other than Claire's with Lithuanian coffee cake. Alice is here today, right here in the front row, with our two children, Tejas and Shanti. She has been my rock and my compass all of these years, and I will always be grateful for her. Now, like many of you, my path to Yale was an unexpected one. My grandfather was a farmer in a poor village in India where he grew rice, tamarind, and coconuts, barely scraping enough together to feed and clothe his 6 children. Against all odds, my father somehow found a way to study medicine. And despite having little money and few connections, he and my mother made their way to the United States. They opened up a primary care clinic in Miami, Florida, and it was there that they taught me, yes, Miami. I gotta tell you as an aside, whenever I tell people I'm from Miami, they always tell me, you don't look like you're from Miami. I don't know what that means, but it's a great place to grow up. But anyhow, my parents in Miami, Florida, in that beautiful clinic that they built, they taught me that medicine was about so much more than the diagnoses you make and the prescriptions that you write. They taught me that medicine was truly about building relationships and serving a community. Watching them is what inspired me to become a doctor. My parents left everything that they knew to make America their home, not because they believed that our country was perfect, but because they wanted their kids to grow up in a country where the ideal that they aspired to was that everyone should matter and that everyone should have access to opportunities. And despite all the challenges and heartbreaks that we have had as a nation, I stand before you fully aware that there are few countries in the world where the grandson of a poor farmer from India could be asked by the president to look out for the health of an entire nation. That is the power and promise of America. Now, I suspect many of you are looking at the future with a mix of excitement, uncertainty, and worry. I can tell you your parents are certainly looking at it that way. And that is absolutely understandable. The world is full of new opportunities, but it's also rapidly changing. And there's no shortage of challenges that we're facing, from future pandemics and the double-edged sword of artificial intelligence to the toll of climate change and heart-wrenching conflicts that continue to plague the world. None of us can predict the future, but I can tell you that there is one factor that will make all the difference between your fulfillment and unhappiness, that will protect you from burnout, enhance your health, and protect your humanity. It's not wealth or fame. It's not prestigious honors or positions of power. It's not even, please cover your ears, faculty, academic tenure. It turns out to be our relationships with one another. You know, one of the largest and longest standing one of the longest running studies of human behavior, which has been following a cohort and their descendants since 1938, has found that the single most important predictor of health and happiness is good relationships. And this has been confirmed by many studies. Yet for many people, such relationships are becoming more and more scarce. Last year, I issued a Surgeon General's advisory on our epidemic of loneliness and isolation to call attention to the fact that half of adults in America are living with loneliness, and the numbers are even higher among young people. Our social disconnection is now contributing to our increased risk for depression and anxiety, heart disease and dementia, and to an increase in mortality that's on par with smoking and obesity. Now, the truth is, many of us know this inherently. Chances are that we or people in our lives are struggling with loneliness. Today, I'd like to offer you 3 short stories that have taught me about what's at the core of building meaningful relationships. Stories that I hope you will keep close to your heart as you set out to build a connected life. The first story is about being present. When I was a medical student, just a few blocks away from here, my classmate's father had to undergo emergency surgery. Now, thankfully, he did okay. But as budding doctors, we had all kinds of questions. The first and foremost was, who was his favorite clinician? We were trying to figure out what we wanted to do. Was it the internal medicine doctor who was skillfully managing his multiple medical conditions? Was it the nurse who spent the most time with him? We were surprised to learn that it was actually his surgeon. The surgeon would come by at 6 a.m., wake him up from sleep, and spend no more than 5 minutes in the room. But it was what he did in those 5 minutes that made all the difference. He sat on the bed next to his patient. He held his hand. He looked into his eyes. He asked him how he was and listened deeply to the answer. He examined the surgical site with tender care. That 5 minutes felt like half an hour to my friend's father. It was his favorite time of the day. Yet today, we're so often distracted when we're with each other. Our attention is siphoned off by notifications, the news, our inbox, and just the sheer habit of checking our phones all the time. I've fallen prey to this as well, stealing a glance at my inbox when catching up with a friend or checking my phone when I'm supposed to be spending precious time with my kids. We're all working on this. But sometimes we have to disconnect from technology to truly connect with people. So the next time you're catching up with a friend or having dinner with your family, put your devices away and give them your full attention. Remember that your presence has the power to stretch time, to make 5 minutes feel like half an hour, and to leave someone else feeling seen and valued. In a world where so many people feel invisible, your presence can help others heal. The second story is about being real. Being real is about being open and honest with the people in our lives, even when it's risky. It's about having the courage to be vulnerable. In 2017, my life changed overnight when my first tenure as Surgeon General ended abruptly. I was suddenly separated from the work and the colleagues I loved, and I had no idea what to do. Unfortunately, I had also lost many of my ties to family and friends, the cumulative effect of many small moments of putting work ahead of the people I loved. Now I was ashamed to ask for support when I hadn't exactly been a supportive friend over the years. Even when I would see people, I wouldn't really tell them what was going on in my life. I didn't talk about the deep loneliness, the shame and self-doubt that kept me up at night, the fear that I no longer had any value to add to the world. One day, a friend recognized what was happening and said to me, "Vivek, you have friends, but you're not experiencing friendship. You need to tell people what's really going on." I knew she was right. So a few weeks later, I summoned the courage to talk to two friends, Sunny and Dave. It turns out they too were quietly struggling with feeling alone and lost. So we made a pact to video conference once a month and to talk about the issues that were deeply affecting us, our fears and dreams, our joys and our disappointments. We also began checking in regularly on a group text thread and doing spontaneous calls whenever one of us wanted to talk. We called ourselves a moai, drawing on an old Okinawan tradition where a small group makes an explicit commitment to have each other's backs. And over the next year, my moai changed my life. Being honest and open, it felt like I was able to breathe again. I felt lighter. I started to laugh again. I began to forgive myself and to look forward to the future. The moai helped me navigate critical decisions about family, health, and work. At one point, I was offered a prestigious job, but Sunny and Dave helped me realize that my insecurity was driving me to consider the offer, and not a sense of genuine excitement. Thanks to them, I said no. Had I not, I never would have been able to move to Miami and see my parents' delight in the company of my young children for 18 months. I never would have been able to embark on writing a book about a topic that really did excite me, social connection. I wouldn't have been able to say yes when then former Vice President Biden asked me to help him navigate a novel virus that was rapidly spreading around the world in March of 2020, an experience that was deeply meaningful and ultimately brought me back to serve as Surgeon General. Being real with Sunny and Dave helped me find my way out of the darkness, and because they were real with me about their lives, I came to understand from them an essential truth: that life is messy for all of us, without exception. We may walk around with masks and conceal our pain, but it's our moments of authentic sharing that draw us closer and allow us to heal. The third story is about the power of showing up. During the summer after sophomore year in college, my family and I made a terrible discovery. We learned that a man we had trusted for years as a close family friend was actually an international con artist. Yeah, you didn't see that coming, did you? Neither did we. But when he abruptly fled the country that summer, he did so with our entire life savings. We felt betrayed, angry, but also deeply ashamed. Like, how could we let this happen to us? To make matters worse, we received word that the medical office where my parents cared for so many patients over the years with devotion, the office where I found my original inspiration to go into medicine, that had been taken too, and we were about to be evicted from our own clinic. We drove to the office as fast as we could to gather our records and belongings, the whole way fighting back tears. When we got to the office, we were stunned to find a small group of family friends waiting for us at the door with boxes and tape. They heard what was happening and they wanted to help. For the next hour, we sat side by side and packed up a lifetime of memories. There was no judgment from them, no scorn, no awkward questions. There was only a resolve on their faces, which said, "We've got you." I will never forget that. In the months that followed, our friends saw us through some of the darkest moments of our life. They didn't wait for an invitation. They showed up. They listened. They helped. Most of all, they just reminded us that we weren't alone. At a time when it felt like our souls had a tear in it, they patched us up with their acts of love. That is the power of showing up. Be present. Be real. Show up. These are the three keys to nurturing the relationships that will sustain you for the rest of your life. My son and daughter, who are 7 and 6, they remind me that we know these lessons from the earliest days of life. If you watch small children carefully, they focus on what's in front of them. They don't try to be someone they're not. And their instincts are to show up with empathy and care. I was reminded of this recently when I was at the dining table and my daughter playfully tossed a toy toward me. I lunged for it instinctively and immediately felt excruciating pain lance through my shoulder. Dropping to my knees with my eyes squeezed shut, I waited for the pain to subside. And that's when I felt a small hand rest on my shoulder and a small head lean against mine. I opened my eyes, and it was my son. No one taught him how to show up and care. He was born knowing how to, just as we all are. Our instincts might be buried under layers of worry. I will say on that point, for all you may read and see in the papers and on social media, never believe that our truest instincts are to be cruel and mean to each other. We may behave that way. We may find that our true instincts are buried under layers of worry or cynicism or fear. But that instinct to care for and show up for one another, that is still there if we are willing to reach for it. I want to leave you today with a practice that I turn to during those difficult moments that inevitably surface in all of our lives when you feel self-doubt and loneliness. I want you to hold up your right hand. I want you to place it over your heart. I want you to close your eyes. Think about the people in your life who have supported you on your journey to this moment. Your dear family, your close friends, your treasured mentors, the people who have been with you to celebrate your moments of joy, who have showed up during times of disappointment and pain, the people who stood by you even when you lost faith in yourself and who reminded you of who you are. Feel their love flowing through you. strengthening you, guiding you, and filling you with peace. Know that you are deserving of this love. And know that love is always there for you, whether they are with you or not, because it resides in your heart. Now open your eyes. What you felt in those brief moments was the power of love. Love is the world's oldest medicine. It is what I wish for you more than anything else in the world. Your ability to give and receive love is your greatest gift and your greatest power. It is what will sustain you on every step of the journey ahead. I wish all of you a lifetime of happiness, fulfillment, and joy. Congratulations, class of 2024. Thank you so much.